an amazing worker leader, amazing organizer, and also part of the co-op. One thing she always says, well, without fear, then there's no courage. And without courage, we can't take action. We can't take action, we don't win.
Welcome to Think Hopeful, Act Local podcast. We are here today interviewing Davida from SEMU, which she's going to tell us what that stands for. And they're our June 2026 grantee. Really excited to hear about the newly developed Immigrant Worker Land Care Cooperative that we're excited to be supporting. So thanks for taking the time, Davida.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, tell us about SEMU and its background.
Yeah, SEMU is a emerging worker cooperative, Semillas and Manos, Unidas. I work for North Bay Jobs with Justice. We are a labor coalition that has been primarily base building, organizing with farm workers here in Sonoma County for the past 5 years. And part of that kind of fight of both like fighting the bad in the vineyards, improve working conditions, has also been tied with this kind of goal of like building the good, right? As the wine industry declines, also it's an exploitative industry to begin with. What is the just transition for those workers? Because so many of the folks working the vineyards up here, or who have worked in the vineyards in the past, bring so much experience and knowledge of working the land, right? And as climate crisis deepens, that experience and knowledge is so critical. So we have been the past few years trying to develop these programs that kind of bring in that experience and knowledge to then attach to real technical trainings of like doing the land care work that is needed here, just to prepare for climate crisis that gets worse, fire mitigation work, all the vegetation management that comes with preparing for burns, prescribed burns, like erosion control. So that is all things, that types of work that folks in the cooperative have been getting trained up in the past few years. And a year ago, also starting to shift to be like, how do we then take all these trainings and experience and projects and put it more into the ownership of the people doing the work, right? I'm here supporting the development of the co-op. I'm not a member of the co-op, but I'm helping the folks develop it. And like doing all that really critical land care work that we all need done if we all want to continue living in this place in the years to come because of climate crisis. So it's been really cool this past year to really build out the kind of like self-governance structures in the co-op, a lot of really amazing leadership in that process, but by workers, in that amazing leadership of folks who's continuing to do the work on the land of like the prescribed burns and the vegetation management. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, there's so much there around the context that you're working in. Tell us a little bit more about what the cooperative actually is. What is it going to really do? How is it going to work?
Yeah, so the goal of the co-op is to be like this vehicle to be creating the just transition for land care workers. Because whether they work in the vineyards or work doing the vegetation management, folks are tending the land here. And like, how do folks bring a different vision of doing that restoration work to the land? So the right now the co-op is in this model of partnering with other local orgs, like land-based orgs that need folks to be doing that work. And the kind of co-op has been a place for people to create the kind of structures of self-governance, because there's also these kind of companies that do this work that have these more traditional models of how a company runs, even more top down and having someone profiting off this work. But the goal of the co-op is like, how do people all have a say in how this work is done, and to be doing that together, and to be the ones that are really, making a dignified living off doing this work. Because there's so much this work is needed. There's so much of the kind of need on the land and the need of workers who can't depend on the kind of wine industry anymore. So yeah.
Okay. So how at this point, like how many members are we talking in the cooperative? And what's some of the vision of what it might grow to? How could you be able to support more folks?
I mean, right now there are 27 workers, former farm workers, current farm workers who are watching their industry decline, former day laborers. Folks are still in the hustle, right? But I think the goal is like, how do we get for this founding group of 27 folks to the place of like where there can be like stable full-time work to do it? Because the goal is that we have to scale it up, right? The goal isn't just to create a kind of just work model for 27 people. The idea is like, we want that for more people, not just because we want more people need that, but also because the land needs it and everyone who lives here needs that. Because if this work isn't done, we are so much more vulnerable to climate crisis and the versions of fires and drought. So it's like this work of the restoration work and the mitigation work is really important for all of us. So I think the goal in the years to come is to get to that stability of this being full time for all the members in it. And then how do we also start scaling up so that those founders can then be training other workers to do this work, right? We have helped have a big role in the training up until now, but I think part of our vision of leadership development and workers having more ownership and responsibility on driving the just transition is like, how do we get to the place where those people are then training up future members and either to be joining this co-op or creating, we still have to get this one on a solid foundation, but is it a version where the co-op expands, or is it a version where there are multiple co-ops that are part of some kind of local federation of co-ops that is doing the land care work? The way the scaling up, I don't think we've got to yet, but we have this little seed that could be like a really powerful vehicle for doing that kind of work.
That's great. Yeah, we know all about that in Blue Heart, just like being a little model that hopefully then scales up or inspires others to replicate.
Yeah.
I know that the word co-op gets thrown around a lot and is often misunderstood. Could you share with us what it technically means in this case and around ownership, decision making, all that stuff, membership?
Yeah, I think you also get that there's a lot of versions of co-ops, but we're talking about like a worker-owned cooperative, right? Is really about bringing all the like democratic principles we all hold dear into like the workplace. Like, how do people have a say over how a business is run and have a say over like the culture of work, have a say over like decisions that affect people's lives and everyone having a say in that together. And that is like the romantic definition of the co-op, and then there is the nitty-gritty of self-governance, right? Is I think especially when it comes to our workplaces and it's such a big group, like that is something so much of us don't have the practice in, and it's been really cool the past few months to be like wrestling with that with everybody of like, how do we unlearn these cultures and practices of the little boss in our head that tells us this is how the way we should be doing work or running it together, and being like, how do we do it collectively, which is like a hard thing, and I think it's an important thing for us to figure out. So yeah, I think over the next couple years, we'll be moving more in that place of we work with other partners. Our jobs with justice included, the co-op works with partners to help be some of the ecosystem to help incubate the co-op. But how does that incubation move more and more to the place of workers taking ownership over the business management, over the kind of the client relationships? And it'd be cool to get to a point where one day the co-op owns land or they tend to themselves. I was like, how do we kind of get there? I think the ecosystem and the support is really critical, especially we're at the place now where the co-op doesn't have tons of capital and reserves or anything, and trying to figure out there is a certain cycle to land care work that is the climate and where the land is often affects, are there birds nesting that we can't do work right now? Is there what limitations because of where the creek is at? So it's like, how do we get to a place where the cycles of the land don't impact the people's ability to be full time, and like how do we build the systems and the resources and support to get that we'll be the next couple of years trying to really figure out to get the solid base so that this isn't just another side hustle for people, right? This is people, we want this to be the people's primary and stable work, and nobody has done this. There's awesome models for co-ops that we look to and try to learn from. But if anyone out there knows of a really solid land care co-op doing vegetation management work, I would love to connect and learn from. But it's been hard because of the newness of it, right? There's no immigrant owned land care co-op. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I think it would be great if we could hear a story, if you got one of one person or one thing that happened that kind of illustrates how this works. I know you said a lot of people are still working for the man per se. They're working for they've got their main jobs and the co-op is still forming. But do you have a story that might show the trajectory that they're going through?
I mean, yeah, I can share a couple stories. I think someone who's been like a really critical leader in the kind of farm worker fight going back 5 years, Maria Salinas. Maria Salinas is like comes from a Chatino community in Oaxaca, and she brings so many of these traditions of the land care here to Sonoma County and to her family here. And part of some of the work that folks in the co-op have been doing is they prescribe burns, which is, we all know, is a really critical part of our local ecologies in California, bringing good fire back to land. And she often talks about when we're out doing prescribed burns here locally of, oh, she did burns with like her grandfather back in Oaxaca and like on their land back their home. And like doing that here has been so beautiful and special. I remember when it was like, there is intentional community like northeast of Santa Rosa, Moninsville, where like a few years ago, like it was the first time with these worker leaders, like where Maria Salinas was like putting good fire on the ground there in this like on the top of this hill on this burnt out side of a hillside where there was still some healthy tan oaks, and Maria Salinas and like other worker leaders like Anayeli putting good fire on the ground was like a beautiful thing. And there are folks like Onesimo, who's when I came to this country and I was working in the fields, I had 3 goals. I accomplished 2 of those goals. And the third one was like to start a business. And I did that and that failed. But that was me doing it on my own. And now the co-op's a chance to do it all together and create that economic stability together. Because folks like Onesimo and others like are coming from a wine industry that is declining, where there's like less and less work for various reasons of like just the wine industry being in crisis, but also because the bosses are making choices to invest in mechanization and to invest in ways that don't benefit workers, even when workers with the industry. So people like Isidro, who has been doing this work for since the 90s in the vineyards and has had stable employment, is now seeing like less and less work and like less and less opportunities to have a family sustaining income. And so for him, he's, yeah, I'm spending time helping build the co-op because for me, like, this is my plan for when there's no more work in the vineyards like this. And there's a lot of work in helping build it even before it has reached its full like maturity. And so he is pouring time and energy into that to make sure it happens. And yeah, for him, he talks about, I think for him, like a lot of the restoration work of the stream restoration work or just some of the rewilding has been core. He talks about like wanting to see Sonoma County be like one of the pulmones, like the lungs for the world. And he talks poetically about that. But yeah, I don't know if that kind of answers the question and bringing some lived stories to it.
Yes, that's really beautiful. Thank you. And you talked a little bit about resources obviously being scarce when you're starting something up. And where have your startup resources mostly been coming from? What are y'all needing? And maybe just to put a little color around, like for Blue Heart community and extended funder network to know where are the funds coming from and what should people keep in mind if they could think of other connections for funding?
Yeah, I think up until now, so Jobs with Justice, who has been helping incubate the co-op, like we've definitely got a lot of just like normal, like big philanthropy money to help develop the training programs, and a lot of the some of the resources in the warehouse around me are from some of that money to help on the training programs. And so it's now, okay, how do we get to the place where like the co-op itself can own some of that capital, or like what pieces are missing? Because some of the parts, some of the kind of like tools come from other community partners that we partner with. We partner with like local organizations like Oxana Arts and Ecology Center and like other folks who have access to land, All Hands Ecology, to do some of the training, but also have some of the like the land access to do the training and to do some of the work. So I think on the one hand, it's resources to make sure that the actual like tools and capital that the co-op needs aren't dependent on other orgs, like not including Jobs with Justice. We don't need to like depend on us for the tools needed to work. And I guess like also just the place where it's like, how does the co-op have its own like warehouse and place where it has the ability to like have a base of operations that they can manage and not be so dependent on any one or a single org. And I think obviously the kind of like deep vision is one day of the co-op owning its own kind of like land that can be some kind of demonstration site for like the kind of land work that's being done and the kind of care and like the visible impact. But that's like a bigger dream in the future
Yeah.
after having the seed germinate and be solid and stable. But definitely like in terms of just like resources to help like the co-op acquire some of the tools, like so many just like basic tools needed. Yeah.
What both tools literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I was thinking like the figurative tools of just chainsaws are expensive and all
Mhm.
the maintenance of chainsaws. But yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of the training. Jobs are just we're going to continue supporting the developing of the co-op, continue to provide our time, resources, and like
Yeah.
training experience help shape the self-governance. But like kind of like moving into the material stuff that is needed and as it gets a
because the workers don't always own their own materials, right? They've been working with companies who've provided
Totally.
that. So now it's like, how can they build up their own base?
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. And so is there a particular fundraising goal that y'all can share, if you can, that we should be aware of?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have anything off my head. I would love to at some point, as we continue to really get into the business development side of this stuff now. We've spent the past 6 months building out the self-governance, making it all the legal entity and vehicle that everyone owns and controls. But as we get into more of the business development kind of side, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have an answer to give, let alone wanting to speak for the workers. But
Yeah, we would love to continue developing a relationship and seeing if there's any way we can support with some of those goals and business development. And I want to know a little bit more about you. So you're an organizer with North Bay Jobs with Justice, and you're
mhm.
putting a lot of your time on SEMU. And you were telling me before you come from a labor organizing background. What is really the reason that you're here and that you're doing this work?
It's a great organizing question. Yeah, I think for me, like I was mentioning, I came back to California in 2019, and I was like had the great fortune to be able to organize with workers in Google cafeterias, right? It's like mostly immigrant women, like badass Chingona women who were then also folks who are coming in from having organized a union at their workplace and were supporting other workers. And I think having been somebody who prior to that, I think was so much more just in their own little headspace of like, how do we build the world we want? To then be thrust in this organizing campaign where I saw the power of like how just like the organizing is so transformative and so healing. I think for me that was like a very powerful thing. Like when I was first getting started organizing, when I was a member, when I was a steward, it was a very low point in my life where I feel like I didn't have a lot of agency. And then being able to do something with my coworkers to better conditions, that was so healing for me. I remember going to overwhelmed with anxiety and depression in my sad little tiny basement room to then leading a chance at a picket for the first time, and the healing that came from other people, my friends, my coworkers believing in me and believing in my leadership. There's so much power and healing in that. And I think seeing that happen in my feeling that happen in my life and then seeing it happen in other people's lives, that for me is why it's so important. The kind of taking responsibility in our own hands and taking action collectively and together, and the personal transformation that happens is for me why it's so powerful and important.
Yes, I totally agree. The personal empowerment journey and transformation that happens through collective work is really,
Mm,
yeah. So you all are expanding the potential for more people to get that. Uh,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
And also the land needs it too. We've
Mhm.
so much of our own stories are connected to land, and so many of workers' own personal histories are connected to land. Being able to weave those two things together of worker empowerment and land, liberating the land and tying those together is a powerful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, anything else you would want to share with our members or just the broader public? I just really appreciate that you're putting a face to a lot of things that are completely hidden to anyone with privilege in the Bay Area. Like
Mm,
people hear Sonoma and they think wine and cheese, right?
yeah.
And so this is all such important stuff of what makes it all ha happen, and so important to not look away. But yeah, what else do you want to let people know that even if they're giving $25, it's going to this collective?
I think for me, I think especially in these wild times we're living in, I think I see and hear a lot of narratives of just like fear, which is real. There's a lot of fear in people's lives, but there's also a lot of courage and leadership by farm workers here in the North Bay. I think Cecilia, who's an amazing worker leader, amazing organizer, and also part of the co-op. One thing she always says, without fear, then there's no courage, and without courage, we can't take action. We can't take action. We don't win. Fear is a starting place, yes, but people confronting that fear regardless and choosing to do hard things, choosing to organize the coworkers. That's what I get to see and live on a daily basis. And that for me is the narrative I think gets missed. Of everyone thinks pobrecito farm workers, and it's actually people are going through hard stuff, and people are also doing amazing badass stuff to improve their lives. And for me, I always want to communicate that of the hope and inspiration that I get to see and experience by farm workers here, either in fighting the winery bosses. Right now, there's some really exciting just union organizing drives that are happening at a local winery at Rodney Strong that folks should be following. Really inspiring organizing, building the just transition for workers. It's just so much cool stuff that is people confronting fear and not ignoring it, but also not being consumed by it to be their whole identity. And so I just hope everyone takes that of like following the leadership of workers, following the leadership of farm workers, and not thinking that they're just pobrecitos. That's not the case.
Yes, yes. Amen. Thank you so much for this insights and the storytelling that you've shared with us. How can we most get involved and follow and uplift what you're doing?
Hey, definitely. Follow Jobs with Justice on whatever social media. There's again like some really exciting actions this next few weeks as like workers at Rodney Strong continue to organize to fight for a fair process for the union. So folks from the Bay want to come for fun actions. Stay posted. It was just a really awesome action a week and a half ago. Folks organizing with Teamsters 665 and like an awesome picket, and those folks are going to continue to be in that fight, and so supporting that.
Sounds good. We look forward to staying connected to you and keeping you in the Blue Heart family. Thank you so much, Davida.
Thank you.